Socrates is dead. All that's left is a corpse for young Plato to ponder over. Plato thinks about the work of Socrates, and soon arrives at a stunning conclusion. While Socrates had proved to the Athenians that's difficult to know, he never said it was impossible. And yet, he never explained how it was possible. This made Socratic philosophy incomplete. From that moment on, Plato took it upon himself to finish the job. This mission led him to southern Italy. There, he would study under the ideological descendants of Pythagoras. It was these Pythagoreans who would give Plato ideas. Very big ideas. You can call me Ezekiel. This is Plato. Let's jump in. So, before we can get into Plato's ideas, we need to talk about what philosophy is exactly. Broadly speaking, philosophy is the study of 5 fields: metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, politics, and aesthetics. In a healthy system of philosophy, lower levels will inform higher levels. So metaphysics informs epistemology, epistemology informs ethics, and so on. This means that if we establish a system of metaphysics, all else will follow. Now, you probably don't know what any of these fields are, so let's talk about them. First is metaphysics. This is the study of the fundamentals of reality, including whether there's even such a thing as reality. It answers questions like, is reality objective, and are dreams real? Epistemology is the study of knowledge and communication. It includes questions like what is knowledge and what is language. Ethics is the study of action. Specifically, what should you do and why? The things you should do are good, and the things you shouldn't do are evil. Politics is probably familiar to most of you. I usually hear it described as the study of government, but I prefer to think of it as the study of how individuals should treat other individuals and groups, which may or may not involve government. And last is aesthetics, which is the study of art. It includes questions like what is beautiful. It's kind of the black sheep of philosophy, so we're going to pretend it doesn't exist. So with all that understood, back to Plato, starting with his metaphysics. To begin, the Pythagorean theory of 2 worlds that we discussed in our last video was quite convincing to Plato. Except for one point. The Pythagoreans thought that the perfect other world was inhabited exclusively by numbers. And, well, really? Numbers? Let's say you're about to go hitchhiking around the galaxy, so of course you bring your trusty towel along with you. But before beginning your adventure, you turn to your Pythagorean friend and ask him, what is this towel really? The Pythagorean would answer, 42. That's kinda wacky, so Plato would need to make some changes. But to understand those changes, we first need to understand an epistemological problem, the problem of universals and particulars. Here are 4 objects. Most of you should be able to identify the 2 objects on the left as trees, and the 2 on the right as countryballs. Here's why this is a problem. How did you do it? You see, you already have a concept of what a tree is. That concept is the universal tree. But the 2 unique trees, the particulars, look different from each other, and at least one of them looks different from your universal tree. So why do the 2 particulars on the left share a universal, and why are the 2 particulars on the right associated with a different universal? Plato had an answer. He took the Pythagorean world of numbers and cut out the middleman. So now, the inhabitants of Plato's other world weren't just numbers, but all universals, the forms. There's a form for everything, and our world is a reflection of the world of forms. So Plato's answer to the problem of universals and particulars is that, to match a particular to its universal, you determine what form each particular best reflects. So in the case of the 2 particulars on the left, you can see that they reflect a lot of treeness, and very little, if any, countryballness, while the 2 particulars on the right are the reverse. Here's another example. According to Plato, you can tell that this is the letter A because it evokes anus. Wait, let me try that with a different letter. According to Plato, you're able to tell that this is the letter P because it evokes penis. Anyway, just like the Pythagoreans, Plato thought that our world was the lesser of the 2. This is because while our world is filled with imperfect particulars, the world of forms is inhabited exclusively by perfect universals, or forms. But that still doesn't explain how we know about the forms. None of our senses can detect them, which brings us to epistemology. To solve this problem, Plato took a page out of the Orphics book and centered his epistemology around reincarnation. Platonists believed that at some point in time, our souls existed in the world of forms. It's there that we came to know of the forms, but unfortunately, when we transmigrated into this world, we forgot everything, and now have to spend our lives remembering the forms. This means that to Platonists, there's no such thing as learning something new. There's only remembering the things that you forgot at birth. This, by the way, is where our modern word education comes from, because education literally means to bring forth from within. Next is Plato's ethics, but to understand it, we need to take a quick detour into Plato's theory of psychology. The Platonists believe that psychologically, man is divided into 3 warring parts, each with different desires. These parts are the rational, the emotional, and the spirit, or will. That's kinda Freudian. Anyway, here's the thing. Platonism states that our world isn't real, that it's really just a reflection of the world of forms, so the rational part of man, which is what's interested in the forms, is good, while the emotional and spiritual parts are bad, because they're wasting your time with things on this world like food, sex, and love, which aren't even real. So at the end of the day, Platonic ethics can broadly be understood as mind good, body bad. This dislike for material things and preference for intellectualism is important, because it's central to Plato's politics. Plato's politics are the culmination of his entire philosophy. Everything from his metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics contributes to it. So, metaphysically speaking, every man is just a poor reflection of the form of manness. This means that different men will better reflect different aspects of the form. As a result, only some men will reflect the aspect of reason, making the number of reasoning men limited. As such, Plato concludes that it's the duty of the state to find these individuals capable of reason and bring them into a caste of professional philosophers. Now, since Platonists detest physical things, this caste would own no private property, and hold everything in common, including women, allowing them to finally achieve a true communist utopia before Karl Marx was even born. But far more important even than communism was the philosopher's job, which was to rule the city as philosopher kings. Remember, as far as the Platonists were concerned, every reason-capable man in the city was a philosopher. To allow anyone else to make decisions for themselves was a guaranteed catastrophe. Now, let me emphasize something here. The Platonic problem with giving people freedom isn't that they'll make bad decisions, it's that they can't make decisions at all, that they're really only capable of blindly following their emotions and spirit. So really, it'd be irresponsible to give them freedom. Plato then goes into quite a bit of detail about how his philosophers should rule their city. This includes advocating for state censorship of music and poetry, and exercising control over the distribution of women, which I think is worth getting into. You see, mating among the philosophers was to be regulated by their most senior members. The way this would work is that the philosophers would participate in a lottery for the women, but the lottery is really just a cover, because it's actually being rigged by the senior philosophers who are running a secret eugenics program. Hell, Plato even goes as far as to say that citizens lying to their rulers should be punished severely, while rulers should be allowed to lie to their citizens for their own good. Although that one may have been a joke. It's hard to tell with Plato. So now that we understand Platonic politics, I'd like to take this opportunity to suggest a new radical ideology: Platano-Nazism. This is just regular National Socialism, but instead of the Germans being the master race, it's everyone on the same latitude line as Greece. Anyway, this tyrannical, elitist, and authoritarian system is pretty much the model for all of the worst regimes we see in the world today, and it's the culmination of Plato's entire philosophy. So what went wrong? Well, the Orphic death cult definitely didn't help. But the real problem was that Plato was so obsessed with creating a valid epistemology that he let it tyrannize his metaphysics. Remember, Plato's original mission was to prove that it's possible to know, which is epistemological, and has nothing to do with the far more important metaphysical question of whether there is anything to know. So from the very start, Plato got it wrong. The world of forms just isn't real. But let's say you want to take a leap and believe that the world of forms is real. In that case, Plato's epistemology will demand another 2 leaps from you, one in which you separate the soul and the body, and then another for the transmigration of the soul. Plato's ethics are similarly flawed. If, as Plato believed, man is really just a being at war with himself, then it's impossible for him to achieve any happiness here on Earth. And what's worse is that even if happiness was possible, Platonism viewed some of the things that contribute to happiness, like love, sex, and even food, with suspicion. And last, where else could this disaster lead but totalitarianism? Since man is a being at war with himself, and most men lack the reason necessary to win that war, it follows that the enlightened few should be given unlimited power to lead, including the power to sacrifice our worthless and unreal bodies for higher and truly real spiritual causes. And yet, in spite of all that, Plato's philosophy is the most influential in all of history. It was first spread through a school in Athens, the Academy, but it survives today through the works of Kant, Hegel, and even Marx. But Plato wasn't all bad. You see, his philosophy was so wrong that its own flaws made themselves clear to one of his students, a student who rejected unreality and totalitarianism, a student whose ideas would one day conquer the world. I'll see you then.
If you like the things I like, you seem like such a real cool guy. Why don't you like the things I like? Just like the things I like. Why don't you like the things I like?